Urban Agriculture, episode number 10, Quinoa and Asparagus.
You're listening to Urban Agriculture, episode number 10, recorded on October 20th, 2014. Hey everybody, I'm Vincent Racaniello, and with me is Dickson Despommier.
Hello, Vincent.
Welcome back, Dickson.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back from your world tour.
Yeah. Vienna via Lisbon.
Vienna via Lisbon, what does that mean?
That's my tour. That's where I went.
You've been more than that. You've been gone for months. That's why the last urban ag we did was 6 years ago.
No, right. It was before the cavemen started to farm. I understand.
Now, we just did 2 urban ags with 2 different vertical farmers, right?
That's true.
And we have a few more lined up.
We do.
But in the meanwhile, a lot of emails have accumulated.
I can imagine.
And so I thought we should do an email episode.
That'd be good.
Because in answering them, you can provide interesting information.
Or I can try.
I recognize that many people won't want to hear an email episode, but
it may be. No, we do this on other podcasts that we are co-hosting, so I think it is a kind of popular because when people write in, they like to hear the answers to their questions. So we're going to try to supply them.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do that. The first email, by the way, Dickson.
Yes.
If you wanted to send an email to Urban Agriculture, how could you do that?
Well, you do it at urbanag.ws.
And who would you write it to?
You'd write it to me.
Now I have to edit that out. It's urbanag@urbanag.ws. Okay. Robert writes, hello, my name is Robert, and I've been listening to your podcast with great interest. I felt I had to write in and tell you, not only because I enjoyed it, but because I'm the technician for a vertical farm that has been built inside a college in the UK.
Oh, nice.
We're based in a brand new college that has a vertical farm built inside of it. We have only been operating the farm for a few months, where most of our crops go down into our production kitchen, where the students of the college make soups, broths, and other foods with the produce. The farm is in a 66 square meter room that goes up 2 floors. We have 2 hydroponic vertical conveyor systems that rotate so the plants can share the sunlight. And then towards the back of the room, we have 2 aquaponic units that are currently stocked with goldfish, but will soon be stocked with tilapia, allowing us to produce not just healthy green crops, but fish as well. We are fully climate controlled and are able to crop all year round without having to worry about the weather or the seasons. I would be very interested to hear your opinions of our operation. As far as we are aware, we're the only vertical farm operating in school or college anywhere in the world. And as you know, there aren't many vertical farms that have made it past the concept stage and are fully functioning. If you have any questions regarding our farm, please don't hesitate to contact me. I've attached some photos to show you what it looks like. There are many more on our blog, which he sends a link to. Here's the blog, Dickson Despommier.
Yes.
See? Lots of photos there.
And what university is that, Vincent?
Wigan. Wigan.
And what part of England are they in?
They're in Wigan, Lancashire.
Lancashire.
England.
Great.
And they have lots of pictures here.
Well, that's fabulous. We're going to post them, of course, on our website.
Want to interview them?
I would love to interview them because, I've given talks at universities, as you know, as part of my mission in life, which is to spread the word and to get as many other people involved in this as I can so that it becomes a body of work in which many, many different people are engaged. And, in fact, that has happened. The last university I was at where I spoke was at the University of Nottingham, which I know it's not close to Lancashire, but it's in England at least. And there's a strong desire on the part of the University of Nottingham to get involved in this as well. So you guys might want to connect up with them. Chungui Liu, Dr. Chungui Liu, is the director of the program there at Nottingham. So he would be more than interested to hear from you as to the progress that you're making and to keep in touch, because eventually, with enough of these vertical farms going up, an association will form in which you can start to communicate. And I'm looking at
see the conveyor?
I'm looking at the pictures that were sent, and I think this is a fantastic beginning. goldfish in the old days were swallowed on challenges, back
Hey,
in
look,
the 30s.
they made basil ice cream.
This is lovely. I mean, it's fantastic to see such wonderful progress.
That's pretty cool. We'll put a link to that. And
You bet.
listen, Robert, let us know who we should contact. It's a little hard over the pond to do a Skype, but
It is hard. You know what I'd like to know also is the level of productivity that they've got going. How many pounds of this or bushels of that, that sort of thing. I'd love to see something on the productivity because, and are you using grow lights, for instance? And what kind of nutrient solutions are you employing? And I know that you're using fish, the byproducts from fish metabolism in order to fertilize the plants. This begs the question, of course, what are you feeding the fish? And I think our listeners would love to know some of the more details of how you actually set this up to begin with. And what did you base your ideas on in terms of literature available and also things that you've heard or consulted with other people, for instance?
Well, we can ask them all that on the show.
We would love to do that.
By the way, I'm going to be in Glasgow next June, so if you want to come over, we'll do some British urban stuff.
There's an invite. There's an invite.
Can you read the next one?
I don't know. Let's see.
Probably not.
I think I've been away so long I've forgotten how to read. But the next one is by Jody, who writes, "Good afternoon. My name is Jody, and I have been enjoying your podcasts. I am a commercial landscaper in Austin, Texas, with a degree in agronomy from Texas A&M. Wow.
What's the A&M for?
That's agriculture and mining. I made it through episode 5, so if a question/comment is covered in episode 6, you may feel free to disregard my next question. A couple of things. One, I was glad to hear you mention Epcot's The Land. It's one of my favorite places in Disney World, and taking the Behind the Seeds tour years ago was enlightening to someone whose training has always been soil-based. I'll be heading back in December with the family, and I plan to look at it again with a fresh perspective. 2, one of the professors of the soil and crop sciences at the department at Texas A&M was Nobel Prize winner Norman Borlaug, absolutely a very famous man, considered by many to be the father of the Green Revolution. I would love to hear your thoughts on his contributions and the continuing work that the Borlaug Institute is doing and how the tenets of vertical farming could be used outside of the urban space. I think that vertical farming, proved in the urban areas, can be moved into areas that are not urban but are unsuitable for field agriculture. Imagine large vertical farms in sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, feeding and employing tens of thousands. And in fact, I've had a similar dream in my mind as to how this may evolve into something quite universal, not just in cities. 3, I have served on several water task forces here in the Central Texas region, and I would like for you to do a show on the water impact of vertical farming. I would love to. In Texas, 63% of the water used in the state is for agriculture. What is a reasonable reduction and that could be realized with vertical farming? 87% of the state is in some form of drought as of July 1st, so increasing production and reducing water usage is an important goal. And I totally agree, and in fact, I think water is the first essential ingredient in life, period. And of course, life requires food, and food is what we're talking about here.
So what would be that she asked, what is a reasonable reduction that could be realized?
Well, if you farm indoors and use hydroponics, for instance, we've already talked about this, and she said not to do it if you've already talked about it, but I'll do it anyway. Hydroponic farming, compared to outdoor farming, uses 70% less liquid fresh water because it's all directed towards the roots. If you use aeroponics, which is a mist-laden form of hydroponic farming, you get another 70% reduction from hydroponics. So you're almost not using water if you do it aeroponically. The drawback with aeroponics is that it requires more sophisticated equipment, valves, for instance, and things like this, which could get stuck, for instance, in the open or shut positions. And the other thing it does is it generates huge root systems for these plants because they have to expand their ability to absorb things from a less than liquid surface. So they're throwing a lot of energy into their root systems, which, of course, we don't eat usually unless they're carrots or, potatoes or stuff like that. So non-root vegetables with long root systems, there's an energy cost to growing them aeroponically, but the the give back, of course, the take-home lesson is that the less water you use, the more agriculture you can have, because in states like Texas and throughout the American Southwest, and in particular this year and last year in California, where they're having a huge problem with water, that's the central issue. People are fighting over each other's water rights to water their lawns, for instance, or to wash their cars, when they should be really worried about where their next drink is going to come from. So when you start getting down to that level, you realize how precious good old H2O really is. And when you look around the world, it's mal-distributed. How's that? So that most of it's locked up as ice or in lakes that are inaccessible, like Lake Baikal. So the rest of the water has to be distributed in some way to satisfy our drinking needs, our washing needs, and our growing needs. And it's a big struggle under the present condition. Okay, she goes on. 4, as vertical farming increases with the concomitant advancement of the science that similar increases have engendered in other fields, do you think that the variety of crops that can be integrated into the vertical/urban farm can be increased? Well, I already know that they can be, because there's a huge list of crops that you can grow indoors hydroponically. And in fact, about 2 months ago, I heard a very interesting presentation from one of the directors of the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences, who was attending the Nottingham meeting that I was at, and showed what's possible using a lattice kind of arrangement where you're growing root vegetables that grow in the open air. They're not even growing in water. The water is supplied in a form of mist, and you get fantastic production of potato-like vegetables, cassava-like vegetables, that sort of thing. So I think everything is possible. Therefore, it's only limited by your imagination, as I used to say. If you had to guess, what would be the next generation of crops? What would the next generation of crops be? And I think we could concentrate mostly on the cereals, on the grains, rice, barley, wheat, quinoa, those sorts of things, which I think are the staples for most civilizations, basically. Because they're easy to grow outdoors, at least given the current climate regimes, that's off the books. I think that we've really got to rethink how we do this. But in the past, those were the crops that jump-started our civilizations, because they're easy to store, and you can keep them for long periods of time. So you don't always have to have a good growing season in order to have a food supply that's constant. So I think those crops will be next. And then you discussed dwarf corn and dwarf wheat. Can the dwarf plants be harvested efficiently enough in a closed interior system to make it worthwhile, that is, financially, to grow them? And the answer is yes, they can. And if you talk to people that are involved in that right now, you'll get the same opinion from them. Although I don't know exactly how many growing units there are out there that are using dwarf wheat. I know that the guy who claims to have invented aeroponics, and certainly is given credit for developing aeroponics, Richard Stoner, grows dwarf wheat all the time. So it's not difficult to do. It just requires the right systems in order to get it done. Again, I've enjoyed the podcast so far. I'll give number 6 a listen this week, and we'll look forward to the series continuation. Have a great week. That was a nice letter.
Next one's from Eloy, who writes, Dear Mrs. Dickson Despommier and Vincent Racaniello, I'm a listener of your show from Peru. So far, it's been informative and inspiring. I imagine that you're aware of this news, but just in case, I think you should check this article. It's an article in Gizmodo entitled, The World's Largest LED Hydroponic Farm Used to be a Sony Factory.
And
this is a 25,000 square foot indoor farm, which used to be a Sony plant in Japan's Miyagi Prefecture.
Oh, neat.
It was established by plant physiologist Shigeharu Shimamura, who used LED bulbs developed by GE.
Right.
And has made this place. And Dickson, are you aware of this? You tell me about another vertical farm in Japan. Where is that one?
It's called, it's run by a company called Spread, and the name of the company is New Veggie, and we list it on our website as one of the shining examples of how you can grow food without windows. they're using grow lights all the time. They're using hydroponic growing systems. And this facility looks as though there should be a 747 airplane inside, but nope, they're not.
Quite
there
impressive.
are no airplanes inside. They're leafy greens.
Thank you, Eloy.
Very nice.
You see, I'm thinking of starting a roof garden with hydroponics or aeroponics. Any ideas about which one is easier?
Well, hydroponics is definitely
Much easier.
Much
cheaper,
much
less equipment, less
That's
fancy
right.
stuff.
That's
Yeah.
right. It's all done by gravity because
Yeah.
the grow trays are actually slanted slightly, so the gravity itself
Definitely.
allows the fluid to
Definitely
trickle
start
down,
with
so to speak.
hydroponics. All right.
That's right.
You're next, Dickson.
Sure. Robin writes.
No. You missed one.
I
Clint.
did. Let me go back. Sorry. Oh, sorry about that. Clint writes, "Hello, doctors. I was just listening to episode 6, and it got me thinking about maybe while in Australia you could get an interview with Dr. Wilson Leonard. I've been interested in aquaponics for many years, and Dr. Leonard seems to be doing some very good work. Some very good scientific work on the ratios of fish to plants to keep the systems balanced properly. Maybe he would be a good guest." Yeah, I'm sure he would be. It's too bad I didn't get this before I actually went to Australia.
Well, he's talking about me because you didn't go this year. Did you go to Australia this year?
Not this year. I went last year.
Anyway, he sends a link to a website called Aquaponics Solutions.
Right.
And I know you don't know how to click links, but you could look at my computer.
I actually do know how to click links. It's getting back from the link that I'm having problems.
At Aquaponics Solutions, we specialize in the commercial integrated production of fish and plants. And this is the website of Wilson Leonard. I'm sure he would have been a great guest, but I'm not there anymore.
No. But there are some examples in this country, in the United States, for instance. If you go to Chicago and visit the plant, which is run by John Edel, and I think I've actually mentioned his name several times on this
I believe
podcast. He has that system in place, so you can actually see how the tilapia feces laden with nutrients are then utilized by the plants that he circulates that water through, and how clean the water comes back into the tilapia tank afterwards too. So it's quite a nice system that's balanced and economical to run.
All right, our listener Robin sends in a bunch of links, which I'll go through. The first one is at meltfactor.org, the ice and climate blog of Jason Box, PhD.
Right.
And this is a series of posts. What do you think it's about, Dickson?
I think it's about the disappearing ice fields around
lots
the
of
world.
data. Lots of data in this post.
In case you're
Right.
in case you don't believe in climate change. By the way, it's not a belief system, is it?
No. And he also writes, climate scientists, dying trees, systems, ERO-EI. If you do interview a climate scientist, have them go over the climate change summary and update.
Right.
And he provides a link to climate change summary and update at a blog which is written by Guy McPherson. Okay?
Right.
Most of them are one-trick dogs and do not incorporate the whole picture.
Right.
The global dying off of trees is briefly addressed in a post called Whispers from the Ghosting Trees, posted by Greg Layden, and he provides a link to that.
Right.
Wits End is a blogger from New Jersey who has investigated the matter of dying trees in much detail, and he has a couple of links to that. Basic Investigations and Dead Trees, Dying Forests at another link. The plethora of photographs on her website, A Lot from New Jersey, will help persons who do not see the ongoing calamity due to shifting baselines and the normalcy bias. The ERO-EI, energy returned on energy invested, is a very basic metric for production.
Right.
In eating fossil fuels, provides a link to an article called Eating Oil.
Right.
Eating fossil fuels. What Dale Ellen Pfeiffer describes how a calorie of food takes 7 to 10 calories of fossil fuel energy to produce in the industrial system. What are the figures for the various forms of urban agriculture? It is to be remembered that the embedded energy of the infrastructure, buildings, plumbing, etc., the energy it took to make that infrastructure, amortized over its useful life, should be included. Whether or not they are competitive vis-a-vis the fossil fuel industrial agricultural system will be revealed by the ERO-EI much better than by any financial statement. And once ERO-EI is determined, the relative fossil fuel consumption will be easy to estimate. As far as I know, Dickson, you don't ever do that.
No. I've actually addressed the issue many times with people who should be able to tackle the problem, and the growing systems have not yet been systematized to the point where you can categorize them accurately with regards to new buildings versus old buildings. Now, if you have an old building that's already been used for something, and it's perhaps even balanced out its carbon footprint over the years of amortizing its worth so that the building now is worth zero,
Yeah.
and you repurpose it for vertical farming, you get new life into the building, and you start becoming an O2 plus carbon dioxide negative building. And so that has to count for something also. There's the improvement of the LED lights, and I know we're going to have some guests on our show that know a lot about that subject, and they'll tell us exactly what those figures are. When you look at the energy balances that you've got going, the biggest one is just human resources. Getting enough people inside that building to do the work, feeding them, making sure that their lives are amenable to the industries that you've set up. That is, unless you've automated a lot of the process, like they have in Japan, for instance. So these will be difficult figures to come by, I think. I don't think you're ever going to get a direct comparison of outdoor farming versus indoor farming. I think the bottom line, excuse the expression, but everybody tends to use that, is whether or not the owner has made money at the end of the day. And that's only determined by the market value of what they're growing, the shipping costs, the spoilage, the handling, again, the losses due to those areas. That's probably factored into the outdoor farmers market because we know so much about it, because we've got such a long history. But we don't have that luxury yet of being able to sit down with pencil and paper and to actually make some of these calculations like we would like to be able to do. I think in another 3 or 4 years, though, we'll be there. And so we can give a good answer to this question.
He sent 2 more links, one to an article on Arctic News.
I am.
As a consequence, he's quoting here, as a consequence, the enhanced global warming will melt the global ice sheets at a fast increasing rate, causing the sea level to begin rising at 15.182 centimeters per year in the first few years after 2015, giving an accurate way of gauging the worldwide continental ice loss.
That's very fast.
And this is an article. It's in Arctic News.
Yeah.
More than 2.5 meters sea level rise by 2040.
Good Lord.
And finally, his last link is to another article at meltfactor.org. Concerns that the methane monster may soon be a prowl.
Oh, yeah, because of the melting permafrost up in the Arctic. And that contains a lot of methane that's trapped in the ice. And once that is released, that's going to accelerate even faster the greenhouse gas effects that we've already got going for us. And so that's the biggest worry. You could offset that, though, because the permafrost that melts allows then for other plants to come in and in succession. You may even get an increase further north of the boreal forest that ends well below the Arctic Circle at this point, but you may get that encroaching into the Arctic Circle at that point. That's carbon sequestration. It's a lower albedo than you would have for, let's say, bare soil. So I think that there are some hopeful aspects to it, but I agree. In the most part, that's a very fast rate of melt. And we better watch out in New York City because you know what happened in Hurricane Sandy, right? It trashed all of the southern part of Manhattan. I've seen projections in the year 2100 for New York City, half of it's underwater.
Yep.
Which is a very depressing thing to realize.
Next one is from Dustin.
Right. Hello, gentlemen. First, I have to thank you so much for developing this podcast. I've been listening to them over and over to try and extrapolate all the great information that is within them. My name is Dustin, and I'm a recent graduate from UC Davis with a major in environmental policy analysis, and I'm acutely aware of the issues that we'll face in light of what climate science has found. I'm also concerned about population increase and how that will impact land use, democracy, and our increasing resource use. I believe this multifaceted solution has the great possibility of not only feeding a great deal of people throughout the world, right in their communities, while simultaneously addressing environmental degradation, but also it may be pivotal in developing local economies and improving economic inequalities. Anyway, I'm extremely excited about this idea, and I'd love to get involved and perhaps create my own business. I'm searching for a graduate-level program in Australia or Sweden that could teach me all about the aspects of indoor agriculture, and I was hoping that you might have some suggestions. The reason I'm looking for a program in Australia or Sweden is because I'm interested in becoming a citizen of one of these countries. The only caveat may be my GPA, which at Davis was around 2.7, so that may limit me, but at the very least, I wanted to get your opinion for the next step you think I should take. Again, thank you so much, and I hope that you both keep making these podcasts, at least for my sake. If you do enough, maybe I won't have to pay for a master's degree. That's wishful thinking. I'm sorry, Dustin. That's just not going to happen. Cheers to you and the possibilities of the future. Australia or Sweden? I know Australia has a huge research interest in agriculture at the CSIRO, which is in Canberra mostly, but it's in other cities as well, of course. It's equivalent to our NIH. And so I think if you were to apply to the University of Canberra and get involved in their agricultural programs, that they would be very sympathetic. It's going to be hard to migrate and become a citizen of that country, though. I think it's very difficult as an immigrant to become a natural citizen. Again, I don't know the situation in Sweden any more than I do in
Linköping.
Linköping, I've been to the Linköping. That doesn't mean I know all the details. But it's worth a try because obviously those are great countries and they have great social programs. So I encourage you to check out the details and get back to us and let us know how you do.
So you don't know?
No, I just said I didn't know. I don't know.
I'm just emphasizing that you don't know.
I'm sorry. Let's repeat that one more time.
Dustin,
I don't know.
All right.
I'm just giving you my opinion. That's
one
all.
More link from Robin, the Arch Druid Report. Druid Perspectives on Nature, Culture, and the Future of Industrial Society.
Right.
And this article is called Dark Age America Climate. Next one's from Kate. Hi, team. First off, thanks much for your podcast. I have thoroughly enjoyed the exploration of farming that you both provide. Not only is your podcast insightful and thought-provoking, but your on-air personalities are fun to listen to.
Oh, that's very nice.
I write you for selfish reasons, but hopefully adding a layer of consideration for your listeners. I'm a teacher who is interested in dedicating my practice and potentially a career to sustainable agriculture.
All right.
My head reels when I consider all of what can and should be done. What is the future for careers in urban agriculture? And besides passion, what background is needed to be a successful instrument for change? Also, Dr. Despommier, thank you very much for your book. I'm enjoying every page.
Oh, good.
Thanks, fellas. Keep spreading the word.
Well, Kate, it depends on where you're willing to live as to your opportunities for getting involved in urban agriculture. But, you could begin at a volunteer level at some local urban ag group, and there are tons of them now emerging all over the place. So I think every city has the possibility for this. But some cities have bigger possibilities than others. Milwaukee, for instance, has Growing Power with Will Allen. As I mentioned before, Chicago's got The Plant with John Edel, but other programs there too. And then they've got programs in San Francisco and all up and down the West Coast. And New York City has a lot of possibilities. We've listed a few of the vertical farms that are in operation in New York City. City Hydroponics is a recent one, and I'm sure that they would take on some volunteers. But if you're looking for educational experiences, I think best advice I can give you is to look up a good state university with a highly regarded ag school. And the one that I hold in highest esteem in that regard is the University of Arizona in Tucson. And Gene Giacomelli is my guru. Whenever I need to know something about indoor farming, I get in touch with him, and he's very gracious to get back to me and give me information that I can then use and pass on to everybody else. So if you ask this same question of him, you'll probably get a much different and more detailed answer than I'm giving you right now.
Why don't we get him on the show, Dickson?
We've tried. This man is very busy.
You didn't email him today.
You're right, I didn't.
Come on.
Get on the stick.
Let's get on.
Okay.
This guy would be very informative to our listeners because we get lots of career questions.
We do.
And when he's on, we'll say, look, Gene.
That's right. Pretend you're talking to the unconverted.
What can people do?
That's right. What can we do? And I think you can never go wrong by getting more education. So UC Davis is one of those great places. Penn State University in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania.
Rutgers.
Rutgers is a wonderful place.
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M, fabulous. Michigan, University of Michigan, Michigan State. Those are great places that you can go. And every one of them is now developing emphasis on urban agriculture as well as traditional agriculture because they know this is the next big thing. And that's an exciting prospect for the next 10 years.
You're next.
Kevin writes, greetings, urban agriculture.
No.
I'm sorry, I'll try this again. Greetings, urban agrophiles.
I know it's annoying that I interrupt you,
it's not
but
annoying.
he wrote a nice word and I wanted you to get it.
We can edit this.
No, we. What's the royal we, huh?
That's right. Oh boy, please edit that out. No, we don't do it that way. I'm loving this new podcast, both for reinforcing things I've learned long ago and for learning a lot of new things. I've been interested in urban agriculture for most of my adult life, which admittedly isn't that long, and it's great to hear it's getting such lavish treatment. In light of the outro
tagline.
Yeah, see, the outro tagline, see you upstairs at the farm, I thought I should point out that there's no reason a vertical farm has to be vertical up. See, for example, this underground farm in an old bomb shelter in London. In fact, I met the guy who ran it, and he's fantastic. By the way, Vincent, he's invited both of us to visit it anytime we get into London. In fact, growing underground might make more sense in terms of containment, transport, easier to get heavy things like water down, and most especially because underground settings are not going to compete with living space for people. Of course, the cost of digging out a new underground space might be cost prohibitive, but imagine every new skyscraper built with a few stories underground dedicated to growing things for the building, rather than carving out floors that could be used for human habitation. That's a great idea.
Yeah,
a wonderful idea.
This London thing is in an old tube.
Yeah, exactly right.
So yeah, it doesn't have to be vertical.
Nope.
And in fact, the two people we've interviewed so far, they just spread out, right?
That's right.
However, it's in honor of your book, Dickson, The Vertical Farm.
Well, you could be an upside-down vertical farm. I know that there's a plan for one in Holland that was designed by Plant Lab, which is actually 3 stories underground. So if you went to their website, you would see that hypothetical plan for a vertical farm that has no sunlight possibilities whatsoever, because they consider some of those wavelengths in broad daylight as slower downers for the plant growth. So if you could eliminate them entirely and just give them the stimulatory wavelengths of light, you'll probably be a lot better off in terms of the growth rates.
Okay.
So there.
Very good, Dickson.
Yeah.
All right. The next one is from Eluem, who writes, I would like to tell you about our Phytopod vertical gardening containers. Nice. You can see us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter under the name Phytopod, and he sends a link. And these are gardening containers. Look at this, Dickson. Have you ever seen this Phytopod? They're at a trade show here. You can't see it. Well, it's too bad. You should get your own get your own computer.
That's right.
Anyway, there's a video here that explains. Nice. These are containers. Look, Dickson, there you go. Can you see that?
No, I got it. Yep. Very clever designs.
I don't want to disconnect the recorder
cable.
Designs.
Clever designs.
Thank you, Elium. Since that was short, I'll take the next one. Is that okay, Dickson?
Yeah, absolutely.
Vincent and Dickson, this is Brian. Firstly, thank you for standing on the shoulders of giants and committing your knowledge and time to this wonderful podcast. It is much needed, and 2014 is the perfect time to spread the word of indoor food production. I've been a listener since day 1 of the podcast and have just finished listening to episode 7 to the science of indoor farming. I feel completely obligated to let you both know you've really hit your stride now. Best episode to date. The banter was fun and informative while keeping the podcast moving at an exciting pace. I especially agree with Dickson's statement about farming is not natural. Finally, someone who truly gets it. With regards to the discussion on the profitability of commercial farming, I can attest with 100% it will be profitable in the future, and this is based on the fact that, unlike growing food outdoors, indoor farming relies on solely technology in order to grow plants. Because technology is an exponentially developing phenomenon, there will be, at some point in the future of humankind, a point at which enough energy can be harvested to power everything for orders of magnitude less than what we pay now. In my opinion, now is not the time to worry about profitability of indoor farms. Now is the time to build them and learn. I've been holding off from emailing since the very first episode. I tweeted to Dickson as soon as I heard the first episode. I don't know if he uses that account or if it's a fake or what, but it's finally gotten to the point where I can't hold it in anymore. So here goes. Yeah, that's a fake. Vertical Farm Doc is a fake. It's not Dickson.
No.
We don't know who it is.
That's right.
They actually use your picture.
Well, it's available on the
you
internet. I guess they can do it.
And you don't care. My name is Brian. I'm a mechanical engineer, thinker, dreamer, and entrepreneur, and I've co-founded a startup company called Future Tech Farm. This provides a link to the website. Good. Future Tech Farm is a distributed food production platform that allows people to grow all of their fresh produce needs right in their own living space. Cool. This venture has been massively inspired by the Vertical Farm book, which I read over 2 years ago, and for that, I thank you, Dickson.
My pleasure.
Before I go too far down the rabbit hole on how the platform may potentially work, I'd like to propose a hypothesis for both of you to chew on and let me know what you think. Going back to the first 4 episodes when you were talking about the first and second green revolutions and how we're transitioning into the third green revolution, I'd like to propose the third green revolution be broken down even further into what I've been calling the 2 impending paradigm shifts, both of which will transpose food production to the indoor environment. Right. The first paradigm shift is the one in which I believe food will be grown indoors at commercial scale. This is a massive shift alone in farming in which the process of growing and distributing food increases in decentralization by orders of magnitude. I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and if either of you have been to Grand Rapids, in the middle of winter, you're well aware our strawberries at the local Mayor grocery store don't come anywhere near Grand Rapids. Don't come from anywhere near Grand Rapids. Right. And boy, do they taste like it, too, traveling over 2,000 miles before they hit the shelves. Yeah. What if that distance were 222 miles or less? That's what indoor farms at commercial scale can do. Generally speaking, we're not growing food for nutrition or flavor anymore. We're growing food so it can travel. Indoor farming has the potential to bring back the taste and bring back the healthy. I think we saw that in the 2 growers we talked to, how you can have local, hyper-local production. Hyper-local. Right? Yeah. The second paradigm shift, I believe, will be that of the further decentralization from commercial indoor farms to food grown at the very source of consumption. Zero food miles. This paradigm shift will culminate in the global food supply being produced autonomously without human labor. A very high-level description of how the platform would work. The description I've discovered best used to describe how this phenomenon would operate is a decentralized and distributed food production platform in the form of a DAC, decentralized autonomous company. It may or may not be based directly on a blockchain, but it will definitely utilize a blockchain technology for accounting and incentivizing the network participation. Side note, if you happen to run into anyone you know who understands what this means, please send them my way. We're looking for team members to help us begin thinking and writing our white paper along with research. We believe in the future people will have a personal home grow system to autonomously grow a majority of their fresh food intake. Each one of these nodes on the network will be connected to each other through a decentralized internet. Outfitted with sensors, the network would be able to monitor every variable needed to grow food in each system and adjust in real time to constantly improve upon the efficiency, kind of like a neural network with a positive feedback loop. For example, if you and I were both to grow lettuce and you're able to grow in 30 days flat, but I can't seem to harvest faster than 45 days, and even so my yields are much less than yours, my system would be able to pull data from yours to see what it's doing differently and automatically adjust to match the same variable inputs. We envision these units being appliances of the future in which living spaces will be purposefully built to incorporate them just like today with fridges, stoves, washing machines, etc. I could go on for days about this topic, but I'll sign off with one final thought. If you guys ever need a guest, host, or a third co-host, I'd be more than happy to try a test podcast with you guys and see if it would be a good fit. I'd also be willing to help out with interviewing indoor farmers. I've worked at Green Spirit Farms and know the founders well. Or provide the entrepreneur's perspective in the emerging indoor ag tech industry. In any case, I'm happy to help the cause however I can and will continue to spread the word on the Urban Ag Podcast. We've posted links after every release on our Future Tech Farm Facebook page since the beginning. Seriously, keep up the amazing work and thank you both for your efforts in reassociating the public consciousness of what farming should be. P.S. I really think you guys could benefit from accepting tips either in Bitcoin or BitShares. I'd be happy to assist and help you get set up. P.P.S. Nice choice with the Ronald Jenkins song, Vincent. This sounds great, Dickson.
It does sound great. Very promising.
Dickson, you get any of this?
I got all of it.
You're sleeping.
I'm sorry, I wasn't sleeping.
Should we have him on to talk about his vision?
Closed.
Let's have him on to talk about his vision.
I would happily do.
And you know what, Dickson? If he's good, you can replace me with him.
No, the other way. If he's good, you can replace me with him.
No. You're the vertical farmer, not me. I'm a microbiologist.
Well, so am I. So Roy writes, Gentlemen, I'm a fairly recent devotee of TWIM and TWIV and stumbled upon the Urban Ag podcast. I was so excited listening to the first couple, as the ideas of vertical farming on a commercial scale were new to me, and reasoning behind why we should adopt these systems were compelling. At the same time, I found myself a little frustrated that some points seemed to be belabored and that there was a general tendency to wander off topic. There seemed, in short, to be a lot of filler. Alas, it hasn't gotten any better. I've continued to listen to them to glean the interesting material about various operations out there, but in the last three, I found myself stopping partway through with a cry of anguish as this basic science discussion sputters off in this way or that. Vincent, whose work is also amazing on TWIM and TWIV, does not make a convincing fool and sidekick. Well, he is neither one of those people. Dickson, who have come to know as a very knowledgeable on TWIV, comes off sounding almost senile at times. I am horribly sorry if this sounds harsh. They are my honest impressions, and as Dickson has said, this topic is too important to get wrong. I would like to suggest a variation on the Twix model, which in this case would be to have a podcast episode focus on a working urban ag system, for example, Planticon, and through that bring in basic science in small doses. I also don't know if there's a scientific literature that would address certain aspects of urban ag, but I would also love to hear some of that discussed. That would be playing very much to your strong suit. I'm not trying to be hurtful in any way. It is simply that I think this topic is fantastic, and I'd love to be able to suggest that people listen to the podcast, which I don't currently do. I would never have written this email if I didn't know that you are capable of creating terrific and engaging podcasts. Thank you for your time. Roy. Well, I appreciate your honesty, Roy, and I appreciate your candor.
Well, we did do 2 episodes with working at
we have
urban
done
farms,
that, and
right?
I'm not sure you're aware of those recent ones, but you should check them out just to make sure that we haven't drifted further from the points that you want us to address. And we're about to also engage a light producer, a grow light producer, to explain the science behind LED lights for growing plants indoors. So I realize that we might have repeated ourselves a few times along the way, but we're going to try our best to make this as entertaining and as urgent a subject as we can possibly do, without spoiling the context of the interaction between my raconteur person, Vincent Racaniello, the microbiologist turned urban agriculturist, and me, the microbiologist who never heard of a virus before, as the fall guy for his TWIV program. So we've both come a long way in this, and we have a long way to go. So we take your advice to heart, and we'll try our best to do better.
Is there any science of urban agriculture, like journal articles that we could...
Well,
I know there's a lot of science of ag. I know that, but
yeah, no, there's science articles on indoor agriculture, and Gene Giacomelli is the person who actually teaches that subject at the University of Arizona.
Hey, why don't we get him on?
That's a great idea.
That's your job for the next 2 weeks.
You should really have told me this before. I would have done it.
You want me to email him? I'm compulsive.
I've
Compelling.
emailed him many times. He's just so busy that he doesn't find time.
I'm pretty busy.
You're pretty busy too. Yes, that's true. I didn't say don't do it. No,
Okay.
I think we should.
Next one is from Todd, who writes, "Hello, guys. I'm very excited about the podcast. There has been such a great discussion of soilless agriculture. When I saw this, I immediately thought of the podcast, and I wanted to share it. It's an indoor aquaponic system in one of our local restaurants that is growing microgreens. Keep up the good work." So he sent a link to an article.
Oh, yeah.
A look inside Portland's first in-restaurant aquaponics system.
And which restaurant is that?
Tabla Bistro in northeast Portland.
Tabla Bistro.
So Mobius Microfarms, the winner of last year's Clean Tech Challenge, has installed its modular aquaponics system at this restaurant.
Right.
Combines aquaculture, better known as fish farming, with hydroponics to create a symbiotic fish food growing system.
Cool.
Now, what do you think of having this in a restaurant? I don't know. Restaurateurs have their hands full, don't they, having to deal with this as well?
Well, you just have to add one more person to it.
One
that
person?
Would be the grower.
Yeah.
I know a restaurant in New York City that's the same, although the grow systems are not in the restaurant. They're on the roof. And he's hired a grower that just comes in and harvests and grows and harvests and grows.
Yeah. But, like we talked about with Green Spirit, he has relationships with local restaurants.
That's true.
And they'll call him and say, "Can you do this?"
That's right.
And he's set up to do anything.
He can change on a
right?
dime.
And the restaurant's less flexible. So I'm not sure the value. I mean, I think if you're interested, that's fine. But it just seems to me that you guys are busy enough, right?
Right. But if you ask John Mooney, who is the owner of Bell Book and Candle in New York City, he enjoys doing it. So he enjoys presenting.
So these are small scale things, right?
Small scale things. Yeah,
Modest.
one-on-one. These are one-on-one.
All right.
Yep.
Robin, who was very, very communicative, sent another link.
Are we sure this is the same Robin?
It is the same. 201 essentials to navigate the Dumosphere map for the novice.
The Dumosphere.
And the not and the obsessed. Yes.
Right.
And so you should read this because it's all about the bad things that are going to happen to our planet.
Well, it's already happening.
Dickson, you're next with Andre.
Okay, Andre writes, "Dear Dickson and Vincent, Dickson, I wonder if you remember when in 2005 we met in your office overlooking the Hudson River, that was a while back, to discuss UA, urban agriculture, and our book Continuous Productive Urban Landscapes, Designing Urban Agriculture for Productive Cities. We have just completed the follow-up titled Second Nature Urban Agriculture, Designing Productive Cities, and it is about to be published. We wonder now if you would like to receive a copy from our publisher for review. If so, please confirm with a contact name and postal address." Background information. In the context of rapid urbanization and population growth, there is an urgent need to find strategies to address the world's fragile food security. Second Nature Urban Agriculture, Designing Productive Cities aims to contribute to this pressing issue by offering a radical but achievable approach that is equitable, sustainable, and can create desirable urban environments. This new book takes forward ideas about the CPULS concept, advances and updates the theory, and deals with strategies for implementation. It draws lessons from selected international projects that are innovative, challenging, and underway, all of which have been developed or evaluated by the authors. The book introduces a 4-point plan of CPUL city actions aimed at activists, designers, practitioners, and policymakers interested in implementing urban agriculture as part of a wider urban design strategy. Leading international academics and practitioners from the fields of food planning, the arts, and urban design have contributed to the book, and the foreword has been written by William McDonough. That's a very, very influential engineer, author of the highly influential and acclaimed Cradle to Cradle. It's a fantastic book, and we've mentioned it several times on our podcasts. The book Continuous Productive Urban Landscapes, CPULS, Designing Urban Agriculture for Productive Cities, was published in 2005 and is now recognized as a seminal work making the case for the coherent introduction of urban agriculture into cities. CPULS has been positively reviewed by a wide range of readers, for example by Rob Hopkins, founder of the Transition Towns movement, He gives a website link there, or the Land 8 Landscape Architecture blog, where it was rated as one of the top 4 books on urban agriculture. The CPULS concept has been influential internationally as a policy level, as evidenced by the United Nations University Institute for Advanced Studies, who in a report about the urgent need for enhancing urban biodiversity note, quote, "As the rule of interdependent agencies in urban agriculture, it has..." I'll try this again. "As the rule of interdependent adjacencies in urban ecology has it, the more diversity and the more collaboration between unlikely partners, the better the chance for biodiversity, sustainability, and resilience." A quote from the director of the United Nations, in 2006. Linked to this idea is the concept of continuous productive urban landscapes, which represent a powerful urban design instrument for achieving local sustainability while reducing cities' ecological footprints. Yours faithfully, Andre.
Do you know these individuals?
Well, yes, I've met them both. I have met them both, and I had a delightful, engaging conversation with both of them while they were here, and to see how far they've come with regards to their own concepts and how they've dovetailed into this construct of urban agriculture is really quite encouraging.
Is this what your book should have been?
No, it shouldn't have been anything other than what it was.
Designing Productive Cities. Should we have them on as guests?
We can certainly contemplate that.
Would they lend something to the discussion?
I think they would.
Okay. Do you remember them?
Of course I do. Why do you keep asking that question?
Oh, that's my job, to ask questions. Clint writes...
You're hinting that I might not remember them.
Well, I'm just trying to tease it out here. That's my job.
Yeah, that's right.
Hello, Doctors Racaniello and Despommier. I was looking online for the E-Urban Agriculture Journal mentioned in Urbag 8, and I stumbled on this paper on indoor vegetable production automation. I wondered if you had seen it, and if so, if you had any thoughts on such automation. I worked for about 10 years in water recirculating fish farming, and one of our largest expenses was human labor.
Sure.
We were always looking for ways to grow as much or more while using less person hours.
Right.
So he provides a link to an article entitled Indoor Robot Gardening Design and Implementation. This paper describes the architecture and implementation of a distributed autonomous gardening system.
Right.
It's a mesh network of robots and plants, and the robots are mobile manipulators with an eye-in-hand camera. They're capable of locating plants, watering them, and locating and grasping fruit.
Right.
Wow.
Pretty high-tech stuff.
This is pretty cool. What do you think of that, Dickson?
Well, I think that is part of the future. You're going to have to accept this because the Japanese have also done a lot of work in that area of autonomous robots and plant growth. And a lot of their indoor farming there is managed by servo motors, which have robotics associated with them. So I think there's a place for it. But if you're looking for vertical farming in an urban setting to solve an employment problem, then that's not the answer. The answer is to employ more people that need jobs in jobs that have useful outcomes. And this is one of those areas that you could make a good case for limiting the amount of automation and increasing the amount of hands-on. For instance, there is one going up in Jackson, Wyoming, called Vertical Harvest, and they're going to employ people who are developmentally challenged. And so those people have a tough time finding jobs out there. And here's a perfect application where you can have people sitting down and doing repetitive things that are useful, like packaging up leafy greens or sorting out the not so acceptable from the highly acceptable versions of each of those plants. They can do quality control. You can teach those people a lot of things that machines could do also. But here's a good social reason for keeping people in the loop. So both will have a place in all of this, and you can't prevent either one. You can't say, well, they should all be employed fully before you start to automate, or you can say, well, automation saves a lot of time and it saves a lot of effort on the part of setting these things up, and then you have to worry about where your people are going to come from, and they quit, and they have to be retrained, and so you've got all these personnel problems to deal with as well. Machines break down, you've got the same problem there, so on a different level, of course.
Yeah.
So pluses and minuses in both cases.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for doing this podcast. I'm hoping indoor farming is an idea that the time is right for, so it can be done profitably and sustainably.
Hear, hear. Clyde writes, to whom it may concern.
Wait, can you just stop?
I can.
Why does he write to whom? He knows that it's Dickson and Vincent here, right? It's just funny.
I didn't write this letter.
Don't you think it's funny?
I think it's interesting to beginning because they seem to know that this is a podcast and that we are the co-hosts. Okay. So you probably should address it to the people that are doing it rather than to whom it may concern. It concerns both of us. Okay, but I'll try this again. To whom it may concern Vincent and Dickson. Is it realistic to think that vertical farms could also be in small towns around the country and in rural industrial parks too, so as to provide rural folk job opportunities in rural America too, and better local produce for rural people too? I'm stuck in the inner city of Tulsa, Oklahoma, but dream of living out in the country. Vertical farms gives me a tremendous hope for the future, as do liquid metal batteries and highly efficient electric cars and trucks and hybrid cars and trucks too. Thanks, Clyde. Clyde, those are great thoughts. And next time you write, consider us one of your friends and just say, Dear Vince and Dick. So, absolutely, vertical farming has no limitations with regards to the urban environment. And we just happened to name our podcast Urban Agriculture because we wanted to include things that take place inside the city that could never take place in the rural areas of the world, and that is basically indoor farming in large, tall buildings within the cityscape. But that having been said, smaller versions of vertical farms, 2 and 3 and 4 stories tall, could be established in areas that are regional to supply food for people living dispersed throughout the environment, as, say, for instance, the Navajo Nation in southwest United States. Those people live on the average of 4 or 5 miles apart per house. They're very difficult to network together except by cell phone. But if there were a central vertical farm that could operate at least throughout the winter, because that's the time when they really need this the most, and to produce food items that they find hard to get otherwise. Leafy greens would be one of those things, and fresh fish. You might really be onto something. So I think Clyde has a good point to make, and that is, don't just think of this as an urban environmental solution, but rather as a solution. So I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Maybe we should reinvent ourselves as the new agriculture or something else.
No, you don't have to do that.
Instead of the word urban.
But this clearly will happen everywhere.
Yeah, I think so.
Jim writes, just heard episode 8, another great show.
Oh, good.
Is there a discussion group for this or place that lists who and where the process is being applied? I looked on Google Groups and found very little related information. Certainly you're doing it with Urban Ag, but would a list of growing sources be useful on the site? Seems like there are a growing group of do-it-yourselfers who could share lessons learned. Keep it up, Jim, our friend from Virginia.
Right.
Well, gosh, I don't know about a Google group, because Dickson, bless you, Dickson.
Thank you.
Dickson doesn't participate in online things, and I don't have the
knowledge.
knowledge.
As Vincent.
Yeah, but I don't have the knowledge to participate in a Google group about urban agriculture.
Right.
It would be interesting. I can't.
No, not you, him.
Well, Jim doesn't want to do it. He's a fan, We could make lists on our website of what's happening, but I'm not sure that's what he wants. He wants a discussion group.
Right.
So really someone needs to do this who is interested in this subject and is willing to moderate it.
Yeah, that's right.
So if there's anyone out there, we could talk about it.
Maybe someone listening right now will say, hey, I'll do it, and they can get in touch with Jim through us.
You're next.
How about that?
The next Jim.
Okay. Another Jim writes, hi, could you recommend companies or universities in developing countries who are developing indoor farming or vertical farming would like to make loans through the microfinance organization KIVA to support the new developments in agriculture? They have large numbers of farmers who are using old methods of farming and are willing to look at greener solutions. If I knew what organizations were doing this kind of work, I could direct my loans to them. Thanks for your help and for the wonderful podcast. That's another great idea.
Can you recommend any?
Not all.
In developing countries? Why not? You are the guru. Why can't you recommend them?
Guru of what?
That's a good question. What are you the guru of?
Well, we have to define that one first. I'm certainly not the guru of microloans to various groups.
Colleges or universities, companies or universities in developing countries who are developing indoor or farming or vertical farming.
Right. And I don't know of any. This idea started and will continue to grow in areas that are already advantaged with regards to educational backgrounds, GDPs for countries, rates of literacy, and that sort of is an exclusive club right now. And it's sad in a way because that's the way most of these technologically driven ideas evolve. But eventually, and I'm going to say within the next 3 or 4 years, this idea, if still successful at that point, will have grassroots movements in places that we wish they could have started at, but we know they couldn't. Now, it depends on how you view countries like China and India, because they're mixed bags. There's a very large middle class in both of those countries. There's also a very large disadvantaged group that migrates to and from jobs and sometimes doesn't have any jobs. They're urbanizing like crazy, but they don't have work. And those are the people that you would like to empower with this. And so I know of many initiatives in those two countries that are starting up. So I think if this guy just went online and went to India and said urban ag opportunities, you'd find a lot of people out there that would say, yes, we could certainly use some microfinancing to start an urban agriculture group in our fair city of, and then you can fill in that blank.
You know, if people listen to us in these countries, it would be great. We could connect them, but they don't. You know, we only have 10 listeners.
I think that's not true. I'm sure that's not true. Vincent, you throw darts, and you got to find the target first. You just can't throw them all over the place. We've got a lot of listeners.
Jim writes, hi, I heard a podcast by Shubhendu Sharma on planting a forest to make them successful quickly. Thought Dickson might like this. It seems to go along with his idea of having more forest. And he links to an article. It's a TED Talk. And it's called The Man Who Plants Trees. Shubhendu Sharma is reforesting the world one patch at a time. You know this fellow?
I do not know this fellow.
Well, you better
but
get
I know
to
there
know
are a lot
him.
of people out there doing this kind of thing, so he's not the only one. That I do know. My main hero was Wangrai Maathai, who was a woman in Kenya doing that.
All right. The next email is yours. It's from Junio. It's down a bit.
Junio writes, Dear Dickson and Vincent, after listening to all the episodes of Urban Agriculture Podcast, I have been a longtime listener to all the Twix podcasts, by the way. I was excited to hear that the employer I work for will be experimenting with freight farms to supply leafy greens to our cafeteria. The program manager announced that we will have a vertical farm, even though the pilot program is just a single shipping container. And I teased him that a single-story implement is technically not vertical, but just an indoor farm. I visited the container today, and boy, was I wrong. They use narrow and long columns. Inside of each has roofing material matrix, plant seedlings there, and have many of these columns installed vertically in a shipping container. The plant ends up growing sideways, and it is very fair to say that their farm is vertical. Anyway, I'm anxiously waiting for the day I can eat their harvest in our cafeteria. Oh, also for the next episode of Urban Ag as well. Thanks, as always, for entertaining and intellectually stimulating discussions.
So they actually bring shipping containers to your site, and they manage them as vertical farms.
Yeah.
Is that interesting?
I've heard of that idea, and I'm thrilled that we have a listener that's actually sent us an example.
Jim writes, perhaps the speaker in this talk can share technology and grow food here. So he sends a link to a TED Talk.
Great.
By Dan Barish. And at Park Underneath the Hustle and Bustle of New York, Dan Barish and James Ramsey have a plan to create a park filled with greenery under New York City. The two are developing the Low Line, an underground green space the size of a football field.
Right.
Have you heard of this?
I have not, but I love it. I love the title because we've already got the high line, so now we can have the low line.
Why don't you know this?
Vincent, I don't know everything. This is how I find things out. People write. They tell us things. Then we share that knowledge with everybody.
You're next.
Yes, let's see. I'm trying to find out who wrote this letter first. Yorin writes. That's right. Hi, Dr. D and R. It's also Dr. R, too. Love the show. Much appreciated and very much involved on this side of the pond. As a picky listener, I would like to propose various related fields, such as permaculture, symbioculture, and as I call them, visitor-friendly polydomes. All market research probably shows, just as mine, how to get the public hooked on these amazing developments in agriculture. Love to hear your view on this. Let's take the elevator up to the farm. All the best, Joran. He's in the Netherlands, by the way.
You know this Versa Farms?
I don't.
So I don't understand this. What do you understand? Love to hear your view on this, capital T.
Right.
On what?
Well, this, I think, on including permaculture, symbioculture, and as I call them, visitor-friendly polydomes. Now, polydomes, there's a polydome complex in the southern part of England, I'm blocking on the name, called the Eden Project, and it's in a southern district, and they're huge indoor, I guess, refuges for endangered tropical plants. And we've mentioned this before. So they're
polyethylene domes.
That's right. Well, they're made from ethylene tetrafluoroethylene. That's basically what they're made from.
Yeah.
And so inside, it's a protected environment. And they're very, very strong and very resilient and very successful. So I think what he's referring to is we should create more of this situation throughout the world. And we should be using permaculture in tropical regions. That is burying charcoal in the soil, which is a nutrient-enriching strategy. And the symbioculture, I'm not quite sure of what he means by that. I hope that maybe by listening to our response to his letter, he can send us some examples so that we can better understand what he's trying to get across to the public.
David writes, my name is David. I'm a mentor for the Future City team from Al-Hadi School in Houston. Future City is a national competition where students from middle schools across the U.S. create futuristic cities. The 2015 Future City topic is urban farming. We, myself, staff, and the students would really appreciate it if you could be available for a 1-hour conference call to discuss the future of urban farming. Being subject matter experts, we would really appreciate your insight and guidance.
Happy to do
Dickson, you need to do this.
I would happily do it. And my contact information, I'll just read it right now for you to get, and it's my telephone number that you can reach me at here at work is area code 212-305-1494. So anytime you want to call, or ddd1@columbia.edu and set up a time, I'll be glad to do it.
Yeah, you're going to get a lot of calls.
I don't care.
I do, because I have to listen to you on the phone all day.
That's too bad. Simon Pierre writes, Dear Vincent and Dickson, I apologize for addressing you by your first names, but I feel like I know you after listening to the 9 wonderful podcasts. Your laid-back style of interviewing and learning makes it that way. I am writing to you from Quebec, the French-speaking province of Canada. As I was listening to the Green Spirit Farms masterminds on how they were able during the London Olympics to set up an indoor farm to provide fresh produce for the event, I began to wonder how this can translate to many geographical challenges we face in Canada. I am an ER doc, and I have the privilege to work part-time in many remote and isolated Canadian communities. On my trips, I often find myself standing in front of a stack of dried-out and overpriced lettuce. It is, to use an expression that usually refers to poor inner-city neighborhoods as a food desert of its own. It is thrilling from a public health perspective to imagine a world where the technology of indoor farms gets cheap enough that we can set up small-scale farms providing a few fresh, basic vegetables to these remote communities. Plus, local indoor farms would reduce the carbon footprint caused by having to fly or drive vegetables on huge distances like we currently have to. With regards. That's a nice letter. I agree. I think that's right. That is the direction that things are going in.
Alex writes, Dear Dr. Despommier and Dr. Racaniello, I am a published science fiction/mystery novelist working on an idea for a thriller set in a vertical farm building, and I've been reading through your ideas for the future of agriculture and vertical farming. I've studied your website, TED Talks, and am most of the way through your nonfiction book on the subject, which I will finish soon. First off, thank you for all of your work in this field. It gives me so much hope in the future of humanity that people like you are working to help solve some of the big problems we're facing as a species. I find your arguments and your ideas for vertical farming to be extremely compelling, and I am so encouraged to see them being put into practice. I think this is one of the solutions we're going to need as a species, and soon. Thank you. That being said, I wondered if you might be willing to help me with some of the details for the novel. I'm planning to set the novel in a near-future vertical farm built in either Dallas or Houston, Texas. I need it to be completely indoors and have the climate security system and other equipment to be computer-controlled so that my heroine and hero can be trapped inside by a computer takeover. I'd like my heroes to use the surroundings to cleverly fight off the bad guys and get out of the farm and choose to share their science breakthrough with the world. So naturally, I need an interesting vertical farm to set the book in and interesting technology within the farm. It occurs to me that you guys might have access to some existing designs of farms that you and the designers might be willing to share. I'd be happy to credit you and or the designer for the design in the book. If not, do you have any suggestions on the kind of design that would be appropriate for the climate of Dallas or Houston in specific? Also, as I get further into the project, would you guys be willing to answer the occasional small list of emailed questions on the science behind all this? Well, I want the book to be exciting and one step ahead of current technology. I also take my science very seriously and would like to get as much right as humanly possible to help my readers learn and think while they're reading. I so appreciate all the work and thought you've put up there. Thank you in advance for your time.
Well, my suggestion is that this gentleman get in touch with the vertical farm outside of Texas A&M University in College Station. It's very high tech. It's all automated. It's 18 stories tall. They don't grow food. What they do is they use plants to manufacture various biomedically important materials, such as, in one case, influenza vaccine, in another case, factor 9 for treating hemophiliacs. But you could easily imagine that as a food-producing farm as well. And they may even let you visit it, provided, of course, that you don't smoke. So non-smokers are welcome. People who have even smoked as long ago as 2 years ago would not be allowed to go near the facility. But you could check with the director and see if you can get an appointment to go visit and look at it and take a few pictures. They're not giving away any secrets by letting you inside.
What if he doesn't live in Texas?
Well, then that's another problem.
Why don't you let him talk to you?
I would be happy to, but it sounds like
you just gave your phone number. He needs you to pick your brain.
That's fine.
We have designs on the website. They're going to be going up. They were on the old website, but I haven't put them up on the new one yet. Right. You could look at those, right?
Sure. And the Google Images section of vertical farming is rich in designs, and they're all available to the public.
If you search Google Images for vertical farm, is that what you're saying?
You get about 10 million hits.
All right. Next one is from Frank.
Right. Esteemed polymaths Despommier and Racaniello.
You know what a polymath is, Dickson?
It's somebody who's multi-talented in various directions.
Not me.
Well, that excludes both of us. As always, your presentations are fantastic. Efficiency is obviously the raison d'etre for urban agriculture, and particularly vertical or simply indoor farming. You often highlight various efficiency improvements over conventional agriculture, for example, water, space, or nutrient use. These can be fairly easily quantified and compared. Total energy, however, is a bit more difficult to compare, particularly that of sunlight, as a key component of cost. I'm sure that many other listeners would be interested in learning about the total energy used by indoor farming. Lighting alone is interesting, but the total kilowatt-hour usage for the facility, divided by the kilograms of produce shipped, would be particularly revealing and provide a benchmark for future comparisons. Thanks again for providing us with so much continuing education. The best, Frank. I've actually, every time I go to a meeting and every time I meet with producers, a new vertical farmer, I raise these questions all the time, and every one of them comes back to me and says it's too early in the game to actually make an educated, responsible quote for energy use, because it's a moving target, Vince. And as we'll see when we interview some of these light producers, these grow light producers, the efficiencies are improving almost weekly now. Mm-hmm. So what was true 3 months ago is certainly no longer true. And in fact, next year it may not be true at all. So what I keep going back to is that imagine yourself living in Iceland. If you live in Iceland, you don't have any energy worries. It's all geothermal. It's all available. You just tap into the core of the earth. It's right up there at the surface. Everybody gets free energy. They heat their houses for free. They do a lot of things with that. And, of course, occasionally they lose a village or two through a volcanic eruption. The same is true in Italy. I know that, Vincent, you have Italian heritage in your background, a great deal of it. And the entire peninsula of the Etruscan Peninsula is loaded with examples of exploding volcanoes, Mount Vesuvius, et cetera, Herculaneum. All these, that's geothermal energy. And in those situations, it would be easy to defray the energy argument, defer the energy argument, and say it doesn't matter if I live in North Island of New Zealand is the same. It's gifted with geothermal energy. So the moment you those start to tap into the grid, the municipal grid, where it's 10 cents a kilowatt hour, that's when you've got an economic problem to worry about. And then you have to start worrying about the efficiency of the lights. And so I'm sure that's what this question addresses. And I would love to give you a more direct answer, but again, we give you the runaround because that's what I get every time I ask this question, the same question to the manufacturers.
Well, I'm sure as the field develops, as long as we keep developing this podcast, we may have some answers. But we have to keep going. I don't know.
We will continue to answer, just like Guy Noir, we will continue to answer, or at least ask, the great questions of our time.
All right. With that is our last question for today from Peter. Dear Dickson and Vincent, I saw this do-it-yourself computer-controlled vertical hydroponic system on the Instructables site and thought it may be worth mentioning on Urban Agriculture. The whole module, which takes 160 plants, is built from off-the-shelf hardware.
Nice.
The total cost under $500. Watering, nutrient levels, and lighting are all run by Arduino controllers networked to a Raspberry Pi computer, all allowing system parameters to be monitored and updated in real time.
Wow.
This is a homebrew thing.
We are going to share that with the listeners.
And he sent the link to this wonderful. Look at do you see what it looks like?
I do.
Isn't that cool?
I do. It's a wall of grow system.
And it's computer monitored.
It's great. Home use.
That's really cool.
Perfect.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Yeah.
That will do it for Urban Agriculture number 10. Now, let me just make the statement. We did not do this episode for filler, quote unquote.
Right.
I felt we had a lot of accumulating email.
We did.
And because we'd done a couple of guest episodes and wanted to read them because people have good questions and you have the answers, Dickson. Well, some answers. Obviously, you don't have all the answers.
You'll also notice,
as was abundantly clear today. Abundantly.
Abundant. But you'll also notice that we're not afraid to read emails that are pretty highly critical of some of our.
Yeah, we do that all the time
nuance.
on TWIP.
That's fine.
TWIP.
It's absolutely fine.
Actually, on TWIP we don't, but TWIP we recently
it's a democratic approach here. Well, if you write the letter and if it fits within the normal level of social behavior, we will read your letter.
You can't please everybody.
No, you cannot.
But as you could see today, a lot of people are pleased.
I'll tell you one thing that we do please, and that's each other.
I don't please. You don't please me.
I do. I please you by my presence.
No, you don't.
You please me by your presence.
Get out of here. Go. Now I have to take you home on top of doing a podcast.
You do.
I have to drive you home.
Otherwise, I'll struggle with my ability to cross that large.
It's going to cost me an extra half hour of my life.
But it's worth it. You'll have banter and wonderful conversation all the way home.
You'll probably fall asleep. This episode of Urban Agriculture and all the others can be found for free at urbanag.ws, also on iTunes. And if you want to ask questions, send them to urbanag@urbanag.ws.
Exactly.
We should make a phone case, shouldn't we, Dickson?
We should do that.
We, the royal we. It's always the royal we.
If I knew how to do it, I would have done it.
Why don't you learn? You see me doing it. Why don't you say,
I didn't see you make
Vincent,
that phone case.
Sit down next to me and say, Vincent, can you show me how to do that?
Well, you say you're too busy. I have to teach. I have to go here. I have to go there.
Dickson Despommier can be found at verticalfarm.com. Dickson, welcome back, and thank you for joining me today.
It is, of course, as always, an extreme pleasure and privilege to be opposite you on this podcasting scenario.
Thank you, Dickson. PhD.
Welcome.
Piled higher and deeper.
Yeah.
I'm Vincent Racaniello. You can find me at my blog, which is at virology.ws. If you're interested in viruses, it's the place to go.
It's been a busy week.
It's been a busy 6 months with Ebola virus. You want to learn about it, go there. We have a ton of TWIV podcasts, and I also write about it at Virology blog.
Yep.
I've been working on viruses for 35 years. It's something I know a little bit about, but not a lot. I don't know everything.
No one knows everything, Vincent.
Yeah.
That's why we work in teams.
I know who to ask.
That's the deal.
The music you hear on Urban Agriculture is performed by John Harrison with the Wichita State University Chamber Players, and also Ronald Jenkins. You can find his work at ronaldjenkins.com. You've been listening to Urban Agriculture. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon.
See you upstairs at the Vertical Farm.